Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously. And the administration at the University of Western Ontario, or Western University, along with a whole bunch of other mainstream actors and media and so on, is promoting and attempting to inflame a race war. I'm not kidding. I'm speaking, of course, about the Black Lives Matter phenomenon. And a recent parody of the Black Lives Matter slogan by 4 students at Western who painted a bedsheet with the phrase Western Lives Matter and then posted pictures of themselves wearing Western University shirts, posed with their improvised poster, and posted that to social media. The university's administration has, in the person of university's Associate Vice President Jana Luker, stated that Black Lives Matter is an important human rights movement and a powerful response to systematic racism that permeates our society. Luker continued, also saying, co-opting the Lives Matter phrase in this way is repugnant and trivializes the validity of this international cause and network. I'm not making this up. Western University is a public research university located in Ontario, Canada. They have an enrollment of roughly 30,000 undergraduate students and 5,000 graduate students, and they operate with an annual endowment of $685 million. So this is not a tiny, marginal third-tier institution, which is why it's honestly upsetting to hear from the school's administration that Black Lives Matter is a, quote, important human rights movement. Black Lives Matter is no such thing. It's an orchestrated hate movement funded through the organizations of George Soros, with what seems to me obvious as a goal of initiating a race war in the United States, with the known cost that millions of young black men, along with other people, will die, including police and other first responders, and these people will all be killed in the service of attainment of the goal of inciting a race war. Now, to be fair to most, if not all of the activists within the Black Lives Matter movement, most of them actually and truly believe that they are human rights activists fighting for a productive goal. In fact, even those who preach an overtly violent and hateful agenda, that of killing cops, or, say, murdering their white neighbors, they too believe themselves to be justified in this point of view. Most of them suffer from a combination of miseducation, orchestrated incitement into rage, and they have lived within a world of daily violence inside of black communities, such that they cannot really look at their own situation objectively. And they do, by the way, have a very serious grievance, much more serious than just the periodic killing of young black men by police officers who individually may or may not be overtaken by racism, trying to do their jobs in a violent and volatile urban environment. Black communities in the United States, in fact, do exist within a systematic racism that permeates our society. Those are the words of University Vice President Jana Luker at Western. So the academics are right, at least in that detail. But here's where they fall on their face. The police are not the setters of social policy. The police are not even the most significant instruments of social policy. So if you want to talk about a system of oppression or systematic racism, then you have to look at social policy, and that means you have to look at government. The urban black community in the United States is violent and economically poor, and honestly, they openly celebrate their own dysfunction. The urban black community in the United States does not have a coherent two-parent family structure, and in fact, over 72% of children in African American communities are born out of wedlock. And apart from looking at the problems of violence in black communities, it's an established fact that in all racial and ethnic groups, the single greatest predictor from childhood of adult criminal behavior, drug addiction, habitual unemployment, and psychological illness is fatherlessness, or the raising of children in broken homes. So, am I going too fast for anybody here? Being raised in a broken home, children raised without their fathers or with only one parent in an unstable single-parent household, is the single greatest predictor of adult violent criminal behavior, addiction, and long-term unemployment. The broken family, evident in that 73% out of wedlock birth rate, is the biggest causal factor. So we look at that and then we go, what is the reason for that extremely high number of out of wedlock and single family child raising? What is the reason for that in the black community? Because it's higher there than anywhere else. Centuries of slavery and Jim Crow did not destroy the black family. One generation of the welfare state did. That is the conclusion of American economist Thomas Sowell. Whatever you subsidize, you will get more of. And the American system of social welfare typically requires the absence of one parent before the state will fund child support of the remaining single parent. This is the direct financial incentive of single parents to eject the co-parent from the family unit. And the social policy that creates these rules has a very obvious goal: create and maintain a social class whose community is dysfunctional and therefore dependent on government largesse, and thereby create a reliable voting bloc for the party who supports these programs and policies. And the cost is an ever-increasing level of violence, addiction, unemployment within those communities. And that, my friends, is the systematic racism and oppression that the Black Lives Matter people are actually talking about, even when they don't know it. They don't know precisely what the problem is. They're looking at the cops killing young black men. That's the symptom. That's only the symptom. And the fact that within this storm of violence and publicly funded, induced mental illness, that a bunch of young black men are frequently killed in these violent communities should surprise nobody. Nobody. And blacks outraged that their brothers or their sons are murdered is completely understandable. It is even understandable that they would direct their rage at this problem onto the police or onto their white neighbors with rhetoric calling for the killing of whites and the killing of police. I totally get it. But it is absolutely inexcusable. It's absolutely unforgivable that the administrators of a major university would take as their public position the simplistic and deceitful claim that Black Lives Matter is a legitimate human rights movement when it is clearly not. It is the cynical exploitation of black communities already decimated by the state financing their family's dissolution by a billionaire to incite racism and to foment race war within the United States. And if the academics and the administrators of Western University, who I'm pointing out here, but the rest of the mainstream is just as guilty, if any of them gave a single fuck about young black men killed by cops, or more frequently, killed while engaged in criminal misadventure by other young black men, then they'd be talking about the destruction of the family through the funding of a family-dividing welfare policy, and not throwing their vote behind the justified but uninformed rage of the BLM activists and misnaming an organized movement towards a race war with the dishonest language that it's an important human rights movement. Black Lives Matter's grievances are, I will say, largely justified, but the activists on the ground are being exploited in service of creating a war fueled by hate within the United States. And the academics trumpeting this and claiming it's a human rights movement, there's no excusing them. They're supposed to know better. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, have a lovely day.